Hey guys, how's it going? Kripparrian here. So, Blizzard with the Grand Tournament has done a few things differently than in their prior expansions. One of the things is they've allowed some of their community members to release some of their cards for them. And, well, that's me this time. So today I have for you guys a brand new Hearthstone card coming up from the Grand Tournament expansion. It is Astral Communion. Now, while you guys take a look at the card, gather your thoughts before I give you guys mine, so we can maybe have some pretty cool relations here. I think it's a very cool thing to do from Blizzard. People end up coming to my channel and seeing my content at the same time. There's really no risk to them. I mean, I'll do a great job, hopefully, of showing off this card and telling you guys all the details about its uses. So the card, Astral Communion, 4 mana Druid spell. We know it's a Druid spell because of the brown background. Gain 10 mana crystals and discard your hand. It seems like these two things are kind of very... they really are at odds with each other. You gain 10 mana crystals, which you can play a lot of stuff immediately or even the next turn, but you won't have a hand to play it through. So this makes it so this card has a very few but very special requirements. Just so we go through all the details of the card so you guys don't misunderstand what the card does, we can look at other cards that exist in the game to compare the wording so we could really understand the effects. So gaining 10 mana crystals means that you are gaining 10 full mana crystals forever, for the rest of the game. So when you see like a card like Wild Growth, it gives you 1 extra mana crystal. That's pretty cool. It's a very useful card, as a lot of Druid players know. But you don't get the mana right away because it says the crystal is empty. Whereas if you compare it to a card like Nourish, where you just gain the mana crystals, if you play Nourish on 5 mana to gain 2 mana crystals, you then have 2 mana out of the 7 total crystals left to use that turn. So if you use Astral Communion on 4 mana, you utilize all 4 mana crystals. When you gain 10, you then have 10 mana available immediately, which will probably not be relevant because you won't have a hand, but we can talk about that a little bit more in a second. So it's interesting because if you have a really slow deck where everything in your deck costs way too much mana, you might be able to actually maybe innervate out an Astral Communion on turn 2, or even turn 1. You can just do coin innervate Astral Communion, and if everything in your deck is 6 or 7 mana or something like that, and you have some card draw, it can kind of work in that sense. It's just a little extreme. Okay, this is certainly a card that does not fit in any existing Druid deck right now, but it is so amazing, so powerful in some situations that it might enable some new Druid decks to come about. Now, what I've seen is that Druids in the past have gotten some really wild cards like Tree of Life, just some really high power cards that don't really seem to fit a role, but I feel mana crystals are a pretty big role to fill, even though you discard your hand. And there's a lot of mechanics that actually can put this to use. So outside of the deck and all that kind of stuff, there are some cards that work with this mechanic, and we've seen them in the past, how they interact with cards like Chromaggus. So for instance, Chromaggus is not really that great of a card because when you play him, you're going to lose him before you draw any cards. But some cards have draw effects that are just part of the card, part of the creature that is already on the board from a previous turn. And that is what makes Astral Communion kind of playable. So think about it this way. Let's say you have Loot Hoarder or Acolyte of Pain. There are quite a few other cards and quite a few other spell mechanics that kind of allow you to draw cards from an existing board state, but let's just use those two as an example. You can play Astral Communion, discard whatever you may, but then actually draw cards immediately on the same turn, which you then have 10 mana to begin playing. So yeah, there is some potential here. It actually, if you actually have a deck that synergizes with Astral Communion in that way, you probably want to include Chromaggus so you have that dual synergy, two really powerful cards, but they just require that, bit of combo that's kind of hard to pull off sometimes. But with more things existing in the same card pool, maybe that would now be possible. Another thing that's pretty interesting is if you have cards that allow, high repetition of hero powers, well, you might be able to pull off some crazy stuff. So, for instance, if you had Koldara Drake, and let's say you have the Dream with a Maiden of the Lake as well, If you have 10 mana with an Astral Communion in hand, you can use your hero power 6 times, then play Astral Communion, then use your hero power 10 more times. How likely is that? It's probably never really going to happen. But that's one of the cool things in Hearthstone. Hearthstone's a game that, we have the competitive side, we have the fun side, but really what makes it is the amazing events that happen in the game. So, when you have that one time where Astral Communion is just the most ridiculous, the perfect card, it allows for such a memorable game, such an amazing experience that you then share with the community, and people really get to rejoice in how awesome the game can be. So this card, more than anything, accomplishes that goal. Even if it's not going to see some play, even if it's not going to see like anything anywhere, we are going to see some amazing highlight come up at some point. So I'm at the very least very happy for that. In terms of Arena, it's a very difficult card to quantify. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really see where it works, because you don't really want to play this to discard cards, because if your Arena deck is really, 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 really slow, you probably only have maybe one of these. So yeah, you're going to lose all the games that you don't draw this card, and probably even some that you do draw the card. If you have run out of cards in your hand and this is your last card, it doesn't actually do anything by itself, because usually when you're going to be out of cards is going to be probably by turn 8 or something like that, so gaining 2 mana crystals at that stage is pretty irrelevant. You have to compare it like, the soonest you can ever really be out of cards in a druid is like turn 7 or turn 8 in Arena. So let's say you have Nourish instead of this card. Would you play Nourish to draw cards or to gain 2 mana crystals when you're at 7 mana and have no hand? It's a pretty obvious decision. So it's a pretty horrifyingly bad druid card for Arena. But as far as Constructed, Constructed is driven by the combos, driven by the really wild stuff. And I think there is some potential for this card to see use in some extreme deck. But I think it's still missing a lot of little pieces of that puzzle. But we've yet to see quite all the cards that the Grand Tournament is going to have for us. So maybe that can be the case. But for now, I hope you guys enjoyed my review. Hope you guys enjoyed my release of the Astral Communion. And again, big shout outs to Blizzard for making it happen. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys later.